Hey there, movie lovers. Welcome back to Rocky Watches Movies. Today we're saddling up and riding into the gritty world of Sam Peckinpah's 1969 classic, The Wild Bunch. Known for its groundbreaking storytelling, intense action, and controversial violence, this western redefined the genre and left an indelible mark on cinema history. But how much do you really know about this iconic film? So grab your six-shooter and let's fire through 20 things you never knew about the Wild Bunch. The film was adapted from a story conceived by Roy N. Sickner, an actor and stuntman. Writer Waylon Green penned the original script, which was later rewritten by Sam Peckinpah. Green believed that Peckinpah's rewrite was significant enough to warrant credit, but he had to campaign with the Writers Guild to ensure Peckinpah received recognition. Green has always expressed gratitude to Peckinpah for not rewriting too much of the script simply to claim credit. Green, Sickner and Peckinpah all shared an Academy Award nomination for Best Screenplay, the only Oscar nomination Peckinpah ever received in his career, though they didn't win, losing out to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And talking of that film, Warner Brothers was eager to release The Wild Bunch ahead of 20th Century Fox's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Meanwhile, Fox wasn't particularly worried about the timing, but the rival film's similar theme posed an issue. In reality, Butch and Sundance's gang was called The Wild Bunch. Though unrelated to the Warner Brothers story, the coincidence was problematic for Fox. They didn't want their film to reference another, regardless of which came out first. As a result, Butch and Sundance's gang was renamed the Hole in the Wall Gang, after their hideout in Wyoming. Sam Peckinpah's first two choices for the role of Deke Thornton were Richard Harris, who had starred for him in Major Dundee, and Brian Keith, with whom Peckinpah had worked on The Westerner and The Deadly Companions. While Harris was never formally approached, Keith was, but he declined the role. Ultimately, Robert Ryan was cast after Peckinpah saw his performance in The Dirty Dozen. The film marked a triumphant comeback for William Holden, whose career had declined during the 1960s. Yet this nearly wasn't the case. The role was turned down by several prominent actors, including Lee Marvin, Burt Lancaster, James Stewart, Charlton Heston, Gregory Peck, Sterling Hayden, Richard Boone, and Robert Mitchum. Marvin had initially accepted the role, but later withdrew when he was offered a larger pay deal to star in Paint Your Wagon. Before The Wild Bunch, gunshots in Warner Brothers films all sounded identical, regardless of the type of firearm being used. However, the director, who had spent his youth firing guns and engaging in other cowboy activities on his grandfather's ranch near Fresno, California, insisted that each weapon in the film have its own unique sound effect. At 52, Ernest Borgnine wasn't exactly a spring chicken while filming. However, if you notice him moving stiffly, that's not the reason. He had broken his foot while working on another film, The Split, and wore a walking cast for much of his time on set. There were only a couple of injuries on set. Ben Johnson broke his finger on the machine gun, while William Holden suffered burns on his arm from a squib, which is an exploding blood packet. Considering the 79-day shoot, packed with hundreds of stunts, helmed by a sometimes reckless director, that's not too bad. If you're enjoying the video, a subscribe to the channel would be more satisfying than splitting the loot with the Wild Bunch. There were a few conflicts on set, but perhaps the most unusual confrontation came during the filming of the bridge explosion scene. A dangerous sequence that had stuntman Joe Canutt deeply concerned about the safety of the men and horses involved. According to Sam Peckinpah biographer Marshall Fine, when special effects coordinator Bud Hulbert dismissed his warnings, Canutt took matters into his own hands. Apparently fearing for the safety of the other stuntmen, he enlisted the help of Gordon T. Dawson. Dawson was instructed to stand behind Hulbert with a club, and if the stuntmen began to fall before the final charge was triggered, an outcome that could have resulted in fatalities, he was to knock Hulbert unconscious before he could set off the last explosion. Fortunately, the scene went off without a hitch, and there was no need to resort to such drastic measures. Peckinpah was, to put it mildly, a rascal, a heavy-drinking, hard-living, sometimes violent man who wasn't all that different from the characters in his films. On the lighter side, he was fun-loving and rambunctious, often indulging in good-natured or not-so-good-natured antics with his actors. On this film, his main target was Strother Martin. According to the film's editor, Lou Lombardo, Peckinpah knew that Martin had a fear of horses. So naturally, he gave him the tallest horse to ride and made him mount it while facing downhill. Much of The Wild Bunch was filmed in Parras de la Fuente, Mexico, home to the oldest winery in the Americas. In 1968, the town was still small and rural enough to convincingly stand in for 1913. There is a story out there that local officials were about to introduce electricity. The installation of power lines would have ruined the picturesque setting, so Peckinpah persuaded his producers to pay the town off, to delay the change for another 6 months. But power lines can be seen in shots throughout the film. Wardrobe supervisor Gordon Dawson had his hands full, ensuring the Mexican soldier extras were dressed appropriately. He had 350 uniforms, but the soldiers kept getting shot or blown up, leaving the costumes torn and bloodstained after nearly every take. Dawson and his team worked around the clock to clean and repair the outfits, managing to do so almost as quickly as Peckinpah could ruin them. In total, those 350 uniforms ended up dressing around 6,000 men. Warner Brothers executives became nervous when the film performed poorly at the box office, so they enlisted producer Phil Feldman to trim 10 minutes from the movie, hoping that a shorter runtime, allowing for more showings per day, might improve its performance. Feldman went ahead with the cuts without informing director Sam Peckinpah. To make matters worse, his editing was sloppy, leaving parts of the plot difficult to follow. A furious Peckinpah refused to speak to Feldman again. The cuts were eventually restored, but not until after the director's death in 1984. Apart from the American stuntmen dressed as Mexican soldiers, who carried out some of the more dangerous stunts, all of the troops involved in the final shootout at Mapache's headquarters were actual Mexican soldiers from a cavalry regiment hired by the film company. During the opening robbery sequence, 2 children are seen holding each other and watching as one of the robbers rides by on horseback and scoops up a bag of money from the ground. The boy in that scene is Matthew Peckinpah, the son of the director Sam Peckinpah. In an interview, Ben Johnson revealed that the 2 Mexican women who frolicked with him and Warren Oates in the large wine vats were not actresses but prostitutes from a nearby brothel. Peckinpah had hired them so he could boast that Warner Brothers had paid for hookers for his cast. The last walk scene was improvised by Peckinpah during the shoot. Initially, the scene was meant to start with the bunch leaving the whorehouse and then immediately cut to the confrontation with Mapache. However, once the decision was made to extend the scene, many of the Mexican extras were choreographed by the assistant directors while the scenes were being filmed. Before filming began, William Holden and Sam Peckinpah had a dispute over the mustache Peckinpah wanted Pike Bishop to wear, as Holden reportedly disliked how he looked with one on film. Ultimately, Peckinpah won the argument though, and Holden wore a false mustache during the shoot. Deke Thornton refers to General Mapache as a killer for Huerta, alluding to the real-life General Victoriano Huerta, who had overthrown and murdered Mexican President Francisco Madero in 1913, sparking a civil war. The film was shot in the Mexican town of Parras, located in Coahuila State, which was also Madero's birthplace. According to L.Q. Jones, he and Strother Martin proposed an idea to the director to add more depth to their characters, TC and Coffer. The suggestion was to hint at a homosexual relationship between the two. Peckinpah approved the concept, and the footage was included in the final release of the film. According to editor Lou Lombardo, the original release print of The Wild Bunch contains a staggering 3,643 editorial cuts, more than any other Technicolor film ever processed. Some of these cuts were near subliminal, lasting only 3 or 4 frames per second, making them nearly imperceptible to the naked eye. The film had a budget of about $6 million and earned approximately $10.5 million at the domestic box office during its original release. While the film wasn't a massive commercial hit, compared to some contemporaries, it garnered critical acclaim and later achieved cult status, becoming a very influential film in cinema history. It is ranked as the 80th greatest movie of all time by the American Film Institute. And there you have it, folks. You now know a little bit more about the Wild Bunch. If you enjoyed the video, which I presume you did as you got this far, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos coming to Rocky Watches Movies. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.